All right, welcome everyone to this new episode in Hernan's English Classroom, the show, sorry, where we dive deep into the world of English as a second language. Today, I'm Teacher Hernan, as you all know, and today we have a special treat for you. We'll be talking to an experienced ESL teacher from Bogota, Colombia. His teacher, Fabian. He's going to give us some tips and insights on pronunciation, vocabulary, online teaching, and what it takes to become fluent in English, guys. So grab your notebooks and let's get started. What's up, Fabian? How are you doing today in a bank holiday in Colombia?
Pretty good, thank you, man. Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm really glad that I can continue to share some of the experience that I have acquired over the years.
Oh, no, no, the pleasure is ours. All the audience here, we're all focused on you. We were seeing we saw your videos and we were impressed with them. So here we are, Fabian. Let's start with pronunciation. All right. So I know you have shared some tips for English learners. Can you tell us more about these tips? Why they are so important for mastering the English language? The ones you have plenty of them on your Instagram account. So
Oh, well, thank you for all the compliments, first of all. Regarding pronunciation, I think you mentioned something that's very important, and is that people should focus first on pronouncing correctly, on pronouncing, not so much on their accent, which is a very different, field and a lot of different tips and details, but for first on their pronunciation. So, there are a lot of words that we cannot afford to mispronounce. Let me give you an example. When we pronounce the word, for example, comfortable or literature, or words that have silent sounds, like, for example, walk and talk and should. So we should focus, or the word focus, for example, is a word that a lot of people mispronounce. So we should focus on these words that are very easy to pronounce. I mean, it doesn't take much to pronounce walk or should or talk, where there are silent letters. We should focus on these words, and this is only about pronunciation, I'm not talking about links. I'm not talking about pronouncing it with a British accent, with an American accent, with an Australian accent, but we should only at the beginning focus on pronouncing the T's correctly, the D's correctly, the L's correctly. And this doesn't take much. This only takes a little bit of attention, and uh, right now, people have a lot of resources to acquire these correct pronunciation. Back in my day, there wasn't much. There was just like cassette tapes and listen to them over and over, and it was more difficult. But right now, people have access to the phonetic symbols. They have dictionaries. They have apps in their phones. They have a lot of different websites where people can just listen and practice, and they can even correct your pronunciation. So that's the first step. Focus on those words that have a particular feature. For example, the word, I don't know, a simple example, walk. Okay, walk. So if we start with a few words, in about a month or 2 months or 3 months or 4 months, their pronunciation will be much better. People think that progress is a level, from A1 to A2 to B1. No, I think progress is in the small things. If yesterday I was mispronouncing a word and today I'm pronouncing it better, and the same happens to one or two or three words, that's progress. So my English is going to be better very, very shortly. That's well, some of the tips I can give regarding pronunciation.
absolutely, Fabian. That they are very important. I also think your accent is not that important, but the correct way of saying words, it is important because We have, for example, we have the minimal pairs, and we must make the difference. For example, if we have peach or pitch, we have to make
Mhm.
the difference between the long I and the short I sound. So I totally agree with you. How about expanding vocabulary? I know that's crucial. That's a crucial aspect of language learning. What advice do you have for students who want to build their English vocabulary?
Well, very, very, very good. That's a very interesting question, especially when you are in a country where English is not the official language. This is not an English-speaking country, so many times people don't have access to their everyday conversation. So this kind of hinders their progress in English. So they need to find the tools, they need to find a way of expanding their vocabulary range on their own. So people like to watch TV series. Other people like to read. Other people like to listen to music. So I think that should be the first step. The first step should be finding that that allows them to be connected, something that motivates them to continue, whether it is a movie or a TV series or a book or an I mean, if it's music, whatever keeps them going, that way they can guarantee that they're going to be motivated throughout their process. In my case, I like, for example, to watch. I love TV series more than movies. So whenever I want to expand my vocabulary, I'm going to tell you what I have done because we continue to learn. We don't know everything. We still have a lot to learn. So let me give you an example. Last time I was watching, for example, a TV series called This Is Us, which is based on real life. And so I just make a decision. I sit down in front of my screen and I make a decision and I say, okay, what am I going to do? Am I really going to enjoy the show? Or could I use this episode to enjoy it, and at the same time learn something? So I said, okay, now this time I'm just going to sit down and I'm going to watch it. I'm not going to pay attention to anything, no subtitles, nothing. I'm just going to watch the entire 45-minute episode, and that's it. But the next one, I say, okay, this time I'm going to watch it, but at the same time, I'm going to take this opportunity to learn a few expressions, maybe about places, maybe about characteristics of people, maybe about greetings, whatever it is. So what I do is I sit down, I start to watch, and then the second I see an expression uh, that could be interesting, I pause the video. I pause the episode. I look it up in a dictionary. I decide whether it is part of my personality, part of my use, if I'm really going to to use it. Because, we need to find the words that we are going to use that are part of our personality. Let me give you an example. I see, for example, bummer. I heard the expression bummer one day, and I say, what is that, man? Bummer. Do people really use that? Mummer. And then I said, I need to find out whether it is something people use or not, whether it's too informal or too formal. And after doing that small research, I say, yes, I think I would like to use that expression and I want to recognize it if somebody uses it. So that's when the second step comes into place. I grab a piece of paper or my iPad or my tablet or whatever I write down on, and I draw two columns, right? I like to call it the two columns. So I have the column on the left, I like to call it the what is, and I'm going to include bummer. I say, what is bummer? And on the other side, it depends. If there's like a very clear synonym to this word, I can write it in English. But if it's hard to remember its meaning just by with a synonym, I prefer to write it in Spanish. And I write the second column, and on the second column, I include the translation in Spanish. And later, maybe a week later or 2 weeks later, I I keep those notes on this piece of paper, or I can take it to an Excel sheet or my cell phone, an app that allows me to constantly check this vocabulary, and I randomly check the words. So sometimes I check the information that is on the left, and I ask myself, what is bummer? Oh my God, I don't remember what that is. I remember I saw that word, but if I check it constantly, I will be able to recognize it. And later, I check the information that's on the left, and then I say, how do you say? That is the name of the second column. How do you say? Then I check the word in Spanish and I ask myself, hey Fabian, how do you say, sorry about the word, mamera? Yes.
Yeah.
How do you say that? It's oh yes, I remember. I saw it on This Is Us, and it's people just say bummer. What a bummer. Yes. And that way I keep myself active learning these expressions because if I just see them and I don't do anything about them, I won't be able to remember them later. I can guarantee you that, oh yes, I saw that word, I saw that expression. But if I don't check them constantly, I won't be able to remember them unless I use them on an everyday basis. That's kind of the tip I can give people for their pronunciation.
Their vocabulary. Very good.
I'm
Very
sorry,
good.
their vocabulary. Yes, thank you.
Very good, Teacher Fabian. Here we are with Teacher Fabian today. Remember, guys, thanks for tuning in. We have people on Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We are all over the social media right now. This is Teacher Fabian. He's giving us tips for pronunciation, tips for vocabulary, and of course, tips for learning English, which is the most. So, again, guys, thanks for tuning in today. Fabian, we have another questions. A big concern for students it's how to retain, and I think this is linked to what you just said and what you were just speaking about. But how to retain vocabulary because they can make a list, they can do a whole bunch of strategies, but at the end, when it comes the time to speak, they come when it comes the time to use the words, they just forget, they go blank. So, what would be a good tip that you can give us to retain vocabulary retention? Do you know any statistics about how many times do we have to use a word in order to keep it in our mind? Do we have the statistics? I don't know. The mic is yours, man.
Thank you very much, Okay, so I'm taking notes here. Let me just check. Okay, very well. That's a very good question because I think that, at one point or another, we all have been in the same boat. All of us who are trying to learn a language, whether it is English or French or Italian or German, you name it, we all have been there. And okay, so the first step is high exposure. High exposure. When we learn a word, when we learn an expression, the word or the expression will remain in our brains for some time. It's like, let me put it this way, it's like when you buy a new car. All right, you buy a new car and you think that your car is a novelty, that very few people have the same kind of car you bought. But what happens, the day you buy your car, the following day you're going to start to see that many more people have the same kind of car you have right now. All right, and you didn't see that before. That's because your attention has changed. You can see that, oh my God, look, that's just like my car, and that one, and that one, and that one. So that happens when in languages, when you have a high exposure to the language. What I mean is, you learn an expression today, a new word, a new verb, a new phrasal verb, a new idiom, whatever it is, the more exposure you have to the language, the greater or the higher are the chances of finding and hearing and seeing and those words or those expressions again. But if you learn an expression today, for example, you took your course today, or you saw something on Instagram or YouTube or TikTok that you thought it was interesting, then you forget about it for 3, 4, 5 days, and then you start again, the chances of finding these expressions are going to be lower. So if you're connected, even if it's for short periods of time, you don't have to be connected like all day long, 24/7. No. But if today, you're checking your Instagram, okay, and one of these teachers that are online sharing their knowledge, they gave you a very nice tip, and you are connected to English, for example. Something I like to do, something I personally like to do is I listen to a radio station I think they're based in Minnesota. The name is My Talk 1071. And I like it because they just talk. They don't talk about it's not CNN, it's not the New York Times. No, they just talk, man. They just talk about health, pets, schools, transportation, celebrities sometimes. So as I am cooking, as I am tidying up, as I am doing whatever I'm doing when I'm not in class, I listen to these guys, and I listen to these guys. And very often, you're not going to believe it, very often they're using the words that at some point I have learned. And that keeps me going. That gives me motivation. But like, oh, I remember that. If I hadn't, if I weren't exposing myself to these kind of shows on a daily basis, the probability of hearing those expressions would be much lower. Then in the evening, when I go to bed, I say, okay, I'm going to watch 30 minutes of my TV show, whether it's Breaking Bad or This Is Us or something that is, criminal law, whatever it is that you feel motivated to do, not just forced to do it, but something that you like. I'm sure that sooner or later you're going to start finding these expressions. Currently I have a student who lives in Florida, and this person is she's surrounded by an American family, but she's from Colombia, right?
Okay.
We started our lessons, and then she told me, "Look, Fabian, my English is not bad, but sometimes I feel like my English is like at a lower level than theirs." And I told her, of course, because they're native speakers, they will use their language unconsciously. They're very natural about it. So we decided, or we defined that this natural approach to the language had to be the focus of our sessions. So
Yeah.
when I started teaching her these natural expressions, he was like, "Oh my God, I have never heard that." And then one, and then another, and then another, and then another, and it was really grateful. It was really gratifying to hear her feedback later. Say, like, Fabian, every time we start talking about something, I begin to hear it in my everyday conversations with my family. Now I hear them and they say, oh, this is what we're saying in class. I thought this was like a dictionary expression that I was never going to be able to use, but turns out that whenever she learns something, she puts it to practice and she is more aware of what she is listening to during the, family reunions or parties or barbecues, whatever. She is beginning to adopt this, even though, I mean, in spite of living there, she was only accustomed to using a very limited amount of words. But now that she has started to work with me, she feels more confident. She learns expressions and she uses those expressions and she hears those expressions. So she has been able to create a very nice circle. And this circle is the one we all have to try to create, obviously everyone with their own conditions, in their
100%. Yeah.
apartments, in their jobs, with their resources, with their habits, with their books, with their Spotify list, with podcasts.
Yeah.
Podcasts are a great resource. So everyone, just to wrap up this idea, everyone should find those resources that motivates them and increase the level of exposure to the language. That way, they also increase the probability of finding these words and expressions that they have been learning.
100%. Yes, that's sorry. Now that's the key. The key is to just use the language. We have a saying. I don't know if you. I'm pretty sure you have heard of it, but we have a saying here in Ireland, and it's that English, you use it or lose it.
Oh yeah,
You have no other option. And
yeah.
that's what I say to my students. I mean, like, they want to become fluent in English, they want to become native, which is not positive because we're not natives, but they want to become fluent, but they don't use it every day. How can they become fluent if they don't use it every day? I mean, the Spanish we have, the level of Spanish we have it thanks to the fact that we have been speaking it, we've spoke it every day in our lives. So that we have to do the same thing when it comes to English in order to achieve the goals. All right, Fabian. So we've talked about speaking and vocabulary. But now, what are some effective techniques you can give us to improve listening comprehension in English?
Okay, very well. In that regard, I think there are like some misconceptions, about listening. Mm, and that's pretty much what I tell my students when it comes to listening. They ask me, Fabian, should I or should I not activate the subtitles when I watch a TV series? And I say, okay, so what's your goal? What do you want to achieve? And they tell me, well, I want to improve my listening skills. And I say, well, life doesn't have subtitles, you know? So if you want to compare the way something is pronounced with the way it's written, activate the subtitles. If you want to acquire one or two expressions during a TV show, activate the subtitles. If you want to get the details of a conversation in a movie that is considered like very demanding in terms of English, the type of movies like, I don't know, Sherlock Holmes, where the details are like the key to understanding the mystery, activate the subtitles, okay? But if your goal is improving your listening and you are really going to try to take your listening to the next level, do not activate the subtitles. You can activate the subtitles, you can turn on the subtitles for some different purposes. You know that listening is not 100% the responsibility of our ears. I mean, it's not 100% listening, but it's a mix of a lot of things. It's a mix of vocabulary, obviously. It's a result of grammar because grammar is, also involved in this process. And listening, in my opinion, is a skill. It's not about knowledge, or it's not only about knowledge, but it's also about skill. It's a skill, and a skill is something that you get, or something you develop by practicing it. Let me tell you this. It's like you read a book on how to drive, and you get like all the what you have to do with your right hand, what to do with your feet, and you already know what to do. So you have the knowledge. You have the knowledge. Now you get in the car and drive. I guarantee you it's not going to be the same because this requires practice. It's a skill that you develop over time. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen today. I completed my course, I completed my book, and the next day I'm just gonna go and drive through the city. No, that doesn't happen. That's step by step, and you need to develop also confidence, and you're gonna have a few inconveniences on the way, but it's something that requires practice. I think listening is something like that. It requires knowledge on the one hand, but it requires the skill on the other one. It's a mix. It's a mix. And we need to learn to be patient with ourselves. It's not like I played it once, like, oh my God, that's too hard. I'm just going to skip it. No. Why don't you? listen to that over, try to understand what the context is, try to focus. For example, why don't you listen for the main idea first? You know, let that be your first goal. Listen for the main idea, whatever it is. If it's a listening exercise in a book, or maybe something on YouTube, or maybe something on TV or on a podcast, why don't you listen for the main idea first? And then if it's like 40 minutes, okay, it's a long time. But take 5 minutes and try to listen for the same piece of information, but in detail. Sit down, try to understand the word for word, not for the purposes of understanding, but for the purposes of practicing. Like, okay, yes, I got the main idea, but I missed some details. Why don't you do the same activity you just did and listen for the words, for the links, for the expressions, and try. Obviously, this depends on your level. There are people who are beginning, there are people who are intermediate learners, and there are people who are advanced. Everyone can always improve their listening skills. Everyone can do that. When you're a beginner, obviously, this process should be a little bit more gradual. Try to choose material that has been designed for beginners. There are two types of listening is academic and non-academic. Academic has been designed by levels, professional speakers with very nice voices. This is going to be very easy, but that's the idea, to take it up a notch every time until you can go to the other side, which is the real life, real shows, real interviews, real conversations, but start from the beginning and try to gradually increase the level of difficulty. If you feel that this works for you, all right, do it. If you feel that because it happens to me, man, I'm 46 years old now, and I talk to people. These are new generations, people who have learned English just by watching movies, just by listening to music. That, it's kind of hard, honestly speaking, is hard for me to believe because I learned the old way, without internet, without all of these tools that people have right now. So sometimes I tend to be old school, but I understand that right now people have a lot of apps. They have a
Hmm.
much higher exposure to English than that probably you and I did when we were kids.
Yeah.
So they should take advantage of all the TV shows. They can switch channels, switch languages in their TVs. So if I like something, I don't know, like Criminal Minds, and they can watch it in English or in Spanish. They have a lot of tools. They should really take advantage of those tools and do it with a purpose. Do it more consciously. It's not just sitting there and waiting for the miracle to happen. No, this is too hard. I'm gonna take it down, a little bit. This is too easy for me. I'm gonna take it up a little and try to keep those things in mind, whether it is academic, non-academic, if they're going to listen for the main idea, or if they're going to go into the details, why not taking a dictation sometimes? So it all depends on their levels and on their goals, which is very important to keep in mind before beginning to listen to anything.
100%. So again, is the amount of time we listen to. Do you have a suggestion? Like I normally tell them, according to the comprehensible input theory, I normally suggest 2 hours will be ideal. 2 hours, but at least half an hour every day with a
I
purpose, with a goal. And it's just as easy as you were saying before. As I'm cooking, go on and play the podcast, your favorite podcast, your favorite I don't know, radio station, your favorite series, whatever you want, your favorite tutorial, anything you want, anything. But my suggestion is always try to narrow the topics. If you're listening to podcasts, I don't know, financial podcasts most of the time, so you can narrow the topics, and that way you will be exposed to the same type of vocabulary over and over, day by day. you will, I can guarantee you, you will see results at the end of the path. But do you have another suggestion in terms of time?
I I couldn't agree more. It's hard to say like the number of minutes or hours that people should be exposed, in my opinion, that should be exposed to English. But what I do agree with is the fact that the I mean, listening to something, let's say for example on Monday, listening to a 5 hour show on Monday and then just forgetting about my English on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday,
Yeah,
and then getting back to listening to something on Saturday doesn't have the same results as keeping, like you said, at least 30 minutes every day, being very constant. And I mean, we need to know what we're doing. Sometimes we have the time to listen, which is, with attention. And sometimes we just don't have the time to do that. So at least try to hear something in English. It does like in the background while you're doing something else. And when you have the time, well, sit down and listen to something with a purpose. Okay, today I'm going to try to explore a little bit of I don't know, drama in life. Drama. There are many TV shows that are talk about drama, and there are breakups and they cry, and there are other shows where they talk about like uh, some sort of crime. So I don't know. You can see people trying to smuggle things into countries at airports. It's a very different field. Other times they talk about how to mow your lawn more effectively. So they will talk about machines, something we don't. And that way you begin to explore different topics. Try to divide them, for example, like you said, by weeks. So this week I'm going to try to listen to something along the same lines every single day for 30 minutes. You choose, it's like a diet. To me, this is like a diet, man. A diet doesn't work if you do it, you know, on occasions. Like, okay, on Monday I'm gonna be on a diet, but on Tuesday I'm
no,
just gonna no. It
I'm
doesn't
going
work
to
like
intake all the calories I didn't take on Monday. Like,
exact. It doesn't either you are on a diet or you are not. You try to enjoy your diet, and that way it's going to be easier for you. So languages is pretty much the same. You're not going to you're not going to learn if you are forced, you know to listen to something that's boring, that's slow, that it really doesn't interest you. Try to find uh it's like two birds with one stone, man. You like it, you have fun, and you're learning. It's like the perfect mix. And right now you can find that. Like I said, back in the day, in the 90s, man, it was hard to find what I liked.
yeah,
I used what I had on hand, but I didn't have many resources. So it's important to find that and make it a point, to be very, very frequent. If it's 30 minutes, if it's an hour, well, that depends on your availability, on your occupations, on the things you have to do. If you're a family guy or if you're a student, whatever it is, but try to guarantee that 30 minutes, morning, afternoon, or evening, it all depends on you.
100%. All right, guys. Thanks everybody for tuning in today. We are about to finish. We only have two more topics to go. So again, thanks. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to follow Teacher Fabian. He's giving us today, some ESL experience. So Teacher Fabian, we still have some output to talk about, and it's writing. So, what are your tips? Can you give us some tips to improve writing in English?
Yeah.
Yeah, go on. You can
All
work
right.
right now.
Sure, sure. Well, I think writing of all the skills is the one that is the one we have more tools. Let me rephrase that. When it comes to writing, I think we have more tools than we do with listening or speaking. And right now, we have Google Translate, and now this AI like ChatGPT and all of this technology is really giving us a chance not to cheat, not to lie to ourselves. Like we write very well. No, we should use all of these tools as teachers. So right now we can just try to write something and ask these tools, hey man, correct me. You know, is this too informal? Is this formal? Is this in the right tense? You can write in English or in Spanish, directly in English, directly in Spanish. So my number one advice right now is use this technology that we have to make us better writers. Um, in the past, again, when I wanted to write something, it was difficult to find someone, to go over it and say, "Hey, look, Fabian, this is not the tense. That abbreviation is not possible. You cannot write these two here, or don't forget the third person. This is not in past. Right now, you have all the tools, and I am sure that if you learn to use these tools, they can give you some very accurate feedback, and they will tell you, make up a story. Even if it's the simplest story, it all depends on your English level. If you're a basic student, write a routine, write a routine. Okay, what does my family do every morning? Okay, so my wife gets up around 7 a.m. and she takes a shower. Then she has breakfast and leaves for work. What about my son? And then if you're an intermediate student, try to write something more challenging. Like, for example, I don't know. What happens when computers get old? Yeah, when computers get old, they start to get slow, and the batteries don't last, and they need to plug it in the whole time, and then you start to write something more challenging. The same goes to advanced, students. Why don't you? There are many IELTS topics or TOEFL topics that you can choose from. Choose one of these topics that have to do with society and what people should do or shouldn't do, free education, I don't know, languages, transportation in big cities. There are thousands of topics that you can find online. Choose one of these topics, follow the description there, like write between 200 and 300 words and write it, take your time, try to give your best, and then insert these writings into one of these tools that we have right now and ask it to correct it. It will give you feedback. You might not be able to understand 100% of the feedback because they tend to be too technical, like for
Yeah.
teachers. Yeah, but something you will realize that, okay, at least one or two things, and that will make you better. That will make you better. So as the only way of getting better at listening is by exposing yourself to a lot of audio. The best way of speaking is by trying to speak, even if it's by yourself. The same happens with writing. We need to take the risk of writing something. Write it, and like I said before, if you write it and you use one of these tools, you can get that feedback, and that feedback is um, is the best that can happen to you because you're going to learn from it. But you don't have to write 200 words, not just write ideas. I think I shared a post, I think it was 2 days ago, and it's something that I started to do 28 years ago when I started learning English, and it's something that I do to this day. Every time I'm surrounded by my family, like the whole time, and whenever they say something, I'm always thinking, how would you say that in English? How would you say that in English? Yes, the one that says curiosity. Uh-huh. Exactly. Is it the one on the top? It says curiosity. The one on the right. Exactly
All
that
right.
one. Uh-huh. Exactly. So, man, it started 28 years ago and it hasn't stopped. So one of my kids, they will say something like, uh, cuelgue la toalla después de bañarse. Okay, so I start thinking, how would you say that in English, Nicolás, ponga la mesa. So immediately ponga, man, is that put? Oh, no, no, it's set, you know. And I keep thinking because I need to keep my brain active. And it's something that I started doing, like I said, when I started to learn English, and it has given me great results because it keeps me active about speaking you know that speaking and writing are ways to produce the language, you know.
Yeah, they're the output. Yeah,
Exactly, exactly. And the only way, it's a more active approach. It's more active
100%. Yeah.
exactly than reading or listening. So the only way is by, if you need to say it to yourself, man. It doesn't matter. Sometimes like they ask me like, what are you talking about? Like, was I speaking? I I didn't know I was talking alone, you know. And the same happens with
Myself, yeah.
writing. With writing, if you want to write about something that, like, for example, right in front of my apartment here, I have a very nice view of a very congested avenue. I see a lot of things that happen. I see car accidents, sometimes fights, sometimes you know, there it gets flooded. A lot of things happen. So if I'm in English mode,
A normal day in Bogota, I suppose.
Exactly. It's a normal day in a large city. So if I am in English mode, this is going to be, I'm always thinking, how would you say, I don't know, say "Inundo la calle" or things like that. So I'm always thinking, you know, and sometimes, or and many times, I find like, oh my God, I had never wondered how you say, I don't know, something that is not very usual. But then when I learn it and I read or I watch or I listen to something, boom, I will find it and it will stick with me because I'm connected to the language.
100%. That's a really good and important tip. Very good, very useful. Okay, Fabian, we're coming to the end now, and more and more people are turning to online learners these days, especially after COVID-19. How has your experience been with teaching English online, and what are the unique challenges and rewards of these teaching formats? What can you tell us according to your experience? I know you are a well experienced teacher. You used to be a face-to-face teacher, unlike me that I started teaching on year 2010, and I started teaching face-to-face, but I also went online before the pandemic. So I became an online teacher since 2012, and then after the pandemic I became even more online, and I stopped teaching face to face because I work as a social worker, as a social care worker here in Ireland. So
All right.
your experience been, and what can you tell us about this journey to online teaching and online learning as well?
Well, it's been a whole new road. Yes, I learned English face to face, and I started teaching, and I became a teacher, you know, face to face, like in-person education. And it was very important to have this face-to-face approach because, especially as a teacher, if you don't want to use your native language, in our case, Spanish, in the teaching process, you know, gestures play a very important role. So students can make a direct connection between what they're listening to and what they're seeing. So if we as teachers, we are always using our hands, using our face, exaggerating movements, so students can learn things directly in English. Um, but you know, the pandemic happened and things changed. I used to go to companies basically, mainly, but before I worked with universities and I worked with schools, and everything was conducted in person. But I couldn't go to places anymore, so my wife, she was the one who motivated me to start my virtual activities. And then one day she said, "Well, we have to post something." And to be honest, I was not much of an Instagram guy, or I was kind of a YouTube kind of guy. You know, I loved YouTube and with tutorials and sports and technology and languages. But then my wife, like I said before, she created, like she did pretty much all the work that you have seen on Instagram. She's a designer, and she motivated me to start sharing valuable, useful tips that people could apply to their everyday life in terms of English. Um, I was reluctant. like to believe that people could use that. But to my surprise, people started giving me very, very positive feedback. Very positive feedback. Telling me, hey man, you explain very simply. Everything is concrete. Everything is to the point. You don't use a lot of technical vocabulary. So this is like, oh my God, you need this kind of feedback sometimes because we don't know what we're doing right or what we
Oh
are
yes.
probably doing wrong. So this feedback is like a treasure, man. They're telling you what you are best at, and they can help you shape your profile.
A
Sometimes we
hundred
do
percent.
things like on automatic mode, but this feedback was amazing. I really thank every single one of them because it has been really, really useful, very motivating to keep going. And this is what this becomes. This becomes a very active relationship. Even though I don't know them like face to face, this has become a very active relationship. And I'm learning. I'm learning. What to post, what not to post, how to post it, so people can understand it very quickly. And that has been the challenge. We as teachers, we tend to talk, you know,
A lot.
um,
Yeah.
a lot, yes, for a long time. So here we need to learn to mince our words. Like this is we got a minute, so it becomes a challenge. Like in 1 minute, I need to tell them what I have to tell them. Very clear examples, very clear situations. And when people receive that and you don't see like, "Eh, I'm sorry, I don't understand. Isn't it like this?" No, no, you get just very positive feedback. You're doing a good job. So it's a road that I'm just beginning to explore because it's been less than a year, I think. And people have responded very positively. So I'm very glad, and I like doing this. We do this because we like it, obviously, because at some point it will become money, whatever. But it's a very good new beginning. It's a very good new beginning, something that I had never thought of doing. It had never crossed my mind to use like Instagram, or lately I opened my TikTok account, um, seeing what happened because I'm just beginning to understand it. Every platform has a different language, has a different
Oh,
audience.
but they all want us there. They all want us stuck to them. Like YouTube has just brought up the podcast, so
Man,
they want to take over Spotify. So
I,
YouTube has brought up everything. Now you can find everything on YouTube. Like
yeah.
YouTube wants to replace Twitter because they have brought up the surveys,
Hmm.
but they also want to replace Facebook because they have brought up the posts, and everything is on YouTube now. Stories, everything. It's
Yeah,
unbelievable. Like they just want to drain your time. So yeah, that's a day of a content creator. 100%, Fabian. So have you liked like the challenge, and what rewards can you mention besides the one about the feedback? Just to wrap up the idea and to close. We just came to the end. So what rewards can you
of
mention
course, of course.
of
As
teaching
a
online?
yes, of course, as a businessman, because you're a teacher, but in this virtuality, you tend to become or to think as a businessman. Uh, all of these comments, all of these formats that are new to you, help you understand that as a teacher, you have better opportunities and more potential once you have defined a few aspects of you as a teacher. So, Hernan is probably a great teacher, Fabian is probably a good teacher, but maybe he's better at something and I am better at something. It's hard to say if we don't get this feedback. So maybe some teachers are great at teaching kids, you know. Some other teachers are great at teaching executives. Other teachers are great at teaching teenagers or adults or business English every day. So this feedback really begins to shape something that you didn't something that you didn't know, and something that you cannot ask anybody. Like, what do you think I am best at? If you ask this to some, if you ask people about this, people won't know what to say. Like, I don't know, Fabian, I like the way you teach, but I don't know exactly what it is. But little by little, they begin to shape what your strengths are, probably not your weaknesses, or probably a little bit, and this begins to make you a more focused teacher. So I say, yes, you know what, I think I should focus on this, man. Even though I like doing this, I think I should focus on this, because this is what people are thanking me for. This is what people are appreciating. This is what people have found most valuable, on the one hand. On the other hand, it keeps us growing as people, because by this virtuality, I have had the chance to expand my audience. So before the pandemic, all of my students were based in Bogota, right? The pandemic was over. I started this virtuality process. People from Australia, from Spain, from Mexico, from Peru, and mainly from the United States have contacted me because they want to start a program with me, because they need advice, or different kinds of programs, maybe international tests, maybe one-on-ones, maybe group sessions, a lot of different requests. And by starting to do this, I have been informed of what's going on in the world.
Something you never imagined.
No, man,
No, no, no. Yeah.
they share very valuable things with me about what people, the way people behave in the Netherlands, people who live in the Netherlands, like the details of every day, and they're beautiful, by bikeways, and how cold people are and things like that. The same in, people who live in Australia. Uh, all of this is part of our, this gives us as teachers, this gives us a life, because
Yeah,
we get, we
100%.
we get to hear anecdotes about cultures, about food, about prices. So it gives us a very nice perspective of the world. I think this is also very valuable as people,
A
you
hundred
know?
percent. Yes, yes. The same here. When I was teaching English in Colombia, I was only teaching in Pereira. Obviously, I was doing some online lessons and everything, but within Pereira, like someone might have contacted me from far away. So we just decided to have the lesson through Zoom or through Skype or whatever. But we were both in the same city. Whereas now I'm in Ireland and I have students from Mexico, from Chile, from Peru, from
That's
Argentina.
beautiful, man.
It is
Yeah.
just crazy and beautiful at the same time. All right. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable insights and tips with us today, Fabian. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
The
To our
pleasure is mine,
listeners,
man.
we hope you found this discussion helpful and enlightening. Remember, practice makes perfect. And as always, remember to like and subscribe. And obviously, we'll see you on the following episode next Friday with our new guest. Fabian, if you want to give them the last few words before we close up, from me, that's it. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. And the mic is yours again, Fabian.
Well, thank you for having me. I think people like you or me, there are many more people out there that can be really, really useful, really helpful. So take advantage of our tips, take advantage of what we are giving you. We do it with our heart, we do it very gladly. So put this to practice. Don't give up, find what's motivating, and use all the tools that you have on hand right now. That's the advice I can give you. And well, thank you for following us. Thank you for making this happen. It's thanks to you that we are here. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, 100%. That's true. That's true. I thank them every day. I have an online course every day, a basic course. It's a streaming, it's a live stream course, and that's it. If it wasn't for them, then we wouldn't have anything to do online. So thanks again, guys. Thanks, Fabian, and we'll see you in
You're
the
very
next
welcome.
episode.
All right.